Rachel, it's great to see you.
Great to see you too. It's always good to be able to meet after the webinar and get to some more questions.
Yeah, I feel like we had to cram a lot in this month, so I'm glad we have a little bit of extra time.
Me too. So our first question is, the Republican field is quite large. Which non-Trump candidate has the best chance of breaking through?
Well, as most of our group knows, for several months, ever since the midterm elections, the speculation has been that Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, would be the most likely to defeat Trump if any other Republican were able to do so. And DeSantis actually came very close to Trump in a few national polls and actually moved ahead of him in some statewide polling in early primary states. And that's since gone away. DeSantis has fallen way back and he's in second place, but a lot closer to third and fourth and fifth than he is to Trump in first place. So a lot of people who are watching this primary now believe that if Trump is to be defeated, in all likelihood, with an assist from the various court cases and legal challenges that he's facing, it's probably going to be another one of the Republican candidates. Many people believe that Nikki Haley, the former UN ambassador, had a particularly strong debate last week. Tim Scott, the senator from South Carolina, was judged to have not been as impactful in that debate as many people had expected. And Mike Pence, the former vice president, was far more aggressive. So any of the three of them could potentially emerge. There's still speculation about Glenn Youngkin, the governor of Virginia, and Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia. Trump certainly has a very large lead at this point, perhaps a prohibitive one, but there's no shortage of Republicans who are going to do everything they can to turn the primary into a contest before the nomination is finalized.
So post-election, what do you think the state of the country will be if the campaign coverage is all about Trump and Biden's ethical and legal issues, with essentially no debate on economics, foreign policy, and cultural issues?
Well, there'll be no shortage of debate about social and cultural issues. We'll hear a good deal about abortion. We'll hear a good deal about same-sex marriage. We'll hear a good deal about guns. But for the most part, the public policy exchanges that you talk about, which are normally a significant part of any presidential election, are still going to be there, but they are going to receive so much less attention, primarily because of Trump's legal challenges. But we also know that Hunter Biden, the president's son, is facing some difficulties. And there's likely to be ongoing discussion about President Biden's age. We're already seeing evidence that there are some very loyal progressive Democrats, young people, voters from minority communities and others, who would never vote for a Republican under any circumstances, but who are underwhelmed by Biden and are concerned about his age. So between Trump's trials, Biden's health, there's a lot else going on. And even though the policy discussion will continue, it'll be a much smaller portion of the political debate than we've been used to in the past.
You mentioned the abortion ruling in your last answer. So our final question is, how will the abortion ruling from the Supreme Court affect the election?
I believe there are two very critical, very potentially impactful cultural issues that will be debated in this campaign, one being abortion, the other being immigration. And what's interesting to me is not only does one party have a decided advantage over the other on both of these issues, Democrats gain mightily from an ongoing conversation about abortion. Republicans are just as advantaged when the conversation turns to immigration. But not only does one party or the other have a big advantage on both of those issues, but the other party really doesn't even know how to engage in that conversation. Republicans are still fighting amongst themselves over abortion, and we certainly saw that in the first primary debate. Should there be a national ban? Should each state decide? Should that ban be at 6 weeks? Should it be at 15 weeks? Should it be longer? And Haley, who we mentioned earlier, tried to inject a voice of reason into what was possible in terms of congressional action. But if you switch the discussion to the other side, just as clueless as Republicans are when the conversation comes to abortion, Democrats aren't any more coherent when the discussion is about immigration. They too are fiercely divided. This week we saw both the Democratic governor of New York and the Democratic mayor of New York City very harshly criticize the Biden administration for their handling of the issue. And not surprisingly, when voters think about abortion as a top-tier policy issue, they're much more likely to vote Democratic. When they focus more on immigration, they tend to lean in equally large numbers Republican. So to some degree, the challenge in the policy debate over the next year is not so much to convince voters to change their minds on an issue one way or another, but rather for both parties to convince those swing voters in the middle of the political spectrum to cast their vote based on the issue that plays to that party's advantage. Because the Democrats know if that swing voter votes on abortion, it's likely to be a Democratic vote, just as Republicans know that if that swing voter votes on immigration, they're likely to elect Republicans.
Well, thank you so much, Dan. I'm excited to continue this conversation next month when we talk about the election again. I know there's so much to get to.
I'm really looking forward to it also. And of course, there'll be no shortage of breaking political news between now and our next webinar. So I'm pretty excited to talk about all those things with you in a couple of weeks.
Well, great. I'll see you then.
I look forward to it. Thanks so much, Rachel.
Thanks, Dan.